Mac, McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We got our buddy joining us from PFF, Brad Spielberger. And I got to tell you, Brad, when John ran into you at Eagles practice, he immediately went into the measurables. He goes,
Yeah.
Damn, Spielberger's tall. Didn't know he was that tall. What are you stretching it out at these days?
Yeah, I'm at 6'7". I was hoping to get a tight end tryout from the Birds. You know, Tyree Jackson moved on, so I was hoping I would get a look, but they didn't give me an opportunity.
Yeah, we got a beat guy, Brandon Lee Gouton, what's Brandon, 6'9"? So
at least 6'8". Yeah.
We had a rangy group of reporters there that day. But it was good to see you, Brad, at Eagles practice. I was talking, about Howie Roseman versus some. I think I asked you this question before. What young general manager has impressed you the most? Coming off the TJ Hawkinson extension in Minnesota, which is a team you used to work for. I don't know. Kwesi hasn't done much. He finally did something. Obviously, the personnel aspect, the draft, and I expect him to get something done with Justin Jefferson soon. But I was thinking about it. It made me think about Howie as a young GM. Wasn't good. Experience matters. Now he's really good. And I don't think people are patient enough to get over that hump with young GMs. You think that's
right? I mean, sorry to cut you off. Yeah, sorry. No, they get these 4 and 5 year deals, and I think you do need to kind of get your legs under you. It takes a couple of years. Go look back at even your favorite GMs now. Their first draft class is probably bad. Like it's almost funny. You look back, and I think they learn on the job. They learn how to delegate. They learn how to trust the people around them. I would say maybe Brad Holmes in Detroit. If I had to pick a young GM that I think is doing a very good job, obviously not perfect, nobody is, but has made this franchise from a doormat to a legitimate contender in the NFC. I think with a lot of sharp moves, and I think he knows how to identify talent.
All right, guys, I got to get a read on from you to start the season. 2 teams, legitimate Super Bowl contenders, but missing a big piece as of right now. Last year's Defensive Player of the Year, Nick Bosa holding out with the 49ers, and Chris Jones, who I believe finished 3rd. I think Micah Parsons was between the two of them in voting for the Defensive Player of the Year. 2 phenomenal defensive players that aren't on Super Bowl contenders before the year starts. Now, they could both sign in the next 24 hours, and this is going to become completely meaningless. But as we sit here today, those are 2 big pieces missing from teams that think they can go and win it all. Where are those 2 negotiations at? Anybody overly asking or risking is one of the 2 teams, as John's pointing out, not, being foolish and not getting something done. Where do you see both of those negotiations heading?
Yeah, I think the Niners and Bosa are closer, and I have more confidence they're going to get something done there for a couple of reasons. First, I mean, it's the second contract. It's not a 3rd deal for a 29-year-old player like Chris Jones. I think they already know he's going to become the highest paid defensive player in the NFL, above Aaron Donald at $31 2/3 million. So it's a question of how much above that, but also the Niners structure their deals very uniquely. It's a complicated process, so I think they will get there. It's just ironing out some of the details. Joey Bosa, who has the same agent and obviously is Nick's brother, went right down to the wire as well before becoming the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. So I have way more confidence there. With Kansas City, I think it's a couple things going on there. First, the Chiefs obviously know he's a special player. I think he is still going to be good for a couple more years. I'm not overly concerned by the age, but they've shown they're not going to give these 3rd contracts out very easily. From what I've heard, I haven't been able to confirm this firsthand, but look, Chris Jones is awesome. I've heard the requests or the demands are kind of outlandish. The numbers I've been told that he's asking for, I think he's an awesome player, but I probably wouldn't give it to him either. So I don't want to, it's not something I've been able to learn firsthand. But anyway, I have more faith in Nick Bosa getting done before week 1 than I do Chris Jones.
Yeah, offensively, the guy you talk about complicating things at 29 with Chris Jones, 3rd contracts, Mike Evans in Tampa Bay. I mean, you talk about a 30-year-old guy. I got to count it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons, cracked 1,000 yards every single season. That is amazing consistency. But he's 9 years in. He's 30. How do you give him what he deserves? Man, that is a difficult decision if I'm a GM.
It is, and it also, of course, where the team is right now, they're not good in my opinion. I don't think they're going to be good, the next couple of years. They got to turn over a lot of older players on this roster. You unfortunately have Ryan Jensen, the center, who you made one of the highest paid players in his position in the NFL, tried to kind of do some wonky science last year to come back to play football with Tom Brady, which is awesome, and credit to him for trying to do that, but he may have ended his career in the process. So it's tough because as awesome as he's been, you do start to get like kind of Julio Jones vibes where he doesn't, Mac Evans that is, he doesn't practice a lot. His hamstrings are always bothering him. He has, managed to battle it out and go over 1,000 yards, like you said, every single season of his career. But you could see the drop off coming rather precipitously. So it is a very tough one. But I come back to, he signs a 5-year extension. This is why you're seeing guys sign 3- and 4-year deals, because now he's going into the last year. The team has all the leverage. He probably should have gotten paid before. He's been a team player. He's offered to take pay cuts during the Brady era. He hasn't missed a single practice during training camp, all those things. And it sounds like they're not really close. It's a tough spot, and it shows again to fans. Like, you complain, oh, this guy's not showing up, or you have to weaponize any leverage you have, because these teams, they might say they care about being a team player and all that. They don't.
Give me, and this is for my own edification, and everybody else can learn while I'm learning, cap clarity on the whole Ryan Jensen thing. There's a chance he's never going to play football again. But he doesn't want to retire because he doesn't know 100%, but it just looks very much like he's never going to play again. Does the team have any recourse to try and cover themselves on the cap and the hit that they're going to take for the guy? There's one thing to pay out of pocket, but there's also the cap and insurance you can collect on to end up paying him. How does a guy like Jensen's situation work itself out for a team like Tampa Bay?
Yeah, so they actually already did kind of rework his contract. They turned the 2024 season, which was a real contract year. It's now a void year. They're actually going to do something the Eagles always do with a lot of these older players is you basically carry the guy into 2024. You then, post June 1, release him and spread his cap hits over 2024 and 2025. We've seen that with a handful of players, Brandon Brooks, etc. I could name probably 5 Eagles, Alshon Jeffrey and, all these guys they've done that with. So that's what they're going to do. In terms of getting cash back or anything like that, I think when a player does make a sacrifice like this and try to return for a playoff run, with Tom Brady, I don't think they're going to go after his money or try to get out of paying him, because he was doing it for the team and obviously trying to be there for a key year for the franchise. But yeah, from a cap standpoint, they've already kind of manipulated the numbers there a little bit.
Want to rewind. I should have asked you right away, but TJ's deal, since that's the most recent, kind of reset the tight end market. Very good player. I would rate him behind the big 3 and probably Dallas Goedert here. Probably the 5th best tight end. Very good player. That's sort of how things work normally. But when you look at the contract, good for the player, good for the team. Where would you place yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a great contract for TJ Hawkinson. I agree. I think he's a top 5 tight end, but probably closer to 5 than to 1. But the thing is, when you get traded for top end draft capital, Vikings send a 2nd-round pick, a 3rd-round pick over to Detroit, and then you come in and you're 2nd in receptions and receiving yards behind only Travis Kelce from post-trade deadline through the end of the season. You're going to get a big old bag of money. And so he earned it. He deserves it. We've seen guys that, they get traded to a new place. It's hard to acclimate, learn a new playbook, all these things. And for him to be that seamless, I think, this deal was, you knew you were paying at least, I think $16 million or so per year. So I know on paper it's $16.5 million per year. At the 4-year, $66. When I break it down, it's a 3-year, $48 million contract. I don't really think he's going to make the $18 million in the 4th and final year. So that's good for Minnesota. But no, this was good for TJ Hawkinson, and also really, really good for the tight end market itself. They needed this deal to come through. Everyone talks about running backs, as they should, but tight end has been stagnant as well, and this deal helps push it forward.
All right, then let's talk about another position that seemed to have been devalued, at least here in Philadelphia, because we're on Birds 365, and that's linebacker, where the Eagles have exactly 3 of them on their roster right now, none of which are making any money whatsoever. So as devalued as running back might be, linebacker even more so here in Philadelphia. How is it league wide? Are the Eagles? We know they're not on an island by themselves, but they in the corner of that island with others on it. Are there teams that still value linebackers? How would you describe the value of the linebacker position in the NFL heading into the 2023 season?
Yeah, the Eagles aren't alone, but they certainly are an outlier. They really have never used top-end draft capital or spent significant money. I think like Michael Kendricks is the biggest deal they've given out, and that was probably what, 2013, 2014. I think it's smart, frankly, where you're going to spend more than everybody else on defensive line, and you also do want to spend on cornerback, sometimes safety. Obviously, right now, they're not really spending anything at safety, but that's their approach. If you're going to spend at some spot, you got to give elsewhere, and they've determined off-ball linebacker is that spot for them. So there are other teams that follow the same strategy, but then you also look at, a team like Baltimore, use a first-round pick on Patrick Queen, then trade a second and a fifth to go get Roquan Smith, make him the highest-paid linebacker in the NFL. You have the San Francisco 49ers, who spend on defensive line, as much as the Niners do, but also have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. So it is team to team. The Steelers haven't really spent there in quite a while either. I guess with Andy Weidel in town, maybe that doesn't change. So, yeah, that one's more spread out. But the Eagles aren't alone in thinking we can have a great pass rush, a good secondary, and then just have guys that can just clean up and make tackles and run sideline to sideline. And it's obviously worked for
them. Jonathan Taylor, we got to talk about him and the running back situation. Indianapolis. They're talking out of both sides of their mouth. They obviously don't want to pay Jonathan top of the line money, probably just under Christian McCaffrey. But and then they're asking Miami for Jalen Waddle, which kind of says, well, this is a good player. A lot of people talk about negotiating in good faith. Do NFL teams negotiate in good faith when it comes to running backs?
And that's a good question. And there's actually language in the CBA itself talking about, good faith negotiations, which is borderline impossible to prove it's not happening. I've talked to agents about it, particularly this offseason, kind of like, have you ever thought about filing a grievance or trying to, and they say it's just so hard to prove the valuations of players and all these different things. But to a degree, no. I really don't think this offseason in particular, the running back negotiations were in good faith. I have not gotten any first-hand knowledge on Josh Jacobs, but I don't think there were any real conversations there. As far as Saquon Barkley, what we saw in the media, in my opinion, if you're not giving a contract offer, once you franchise tag a player, I think you should have to offer a deal that contains a fully guaranteed money amount equivalent to 2 franchise tags, because basically that is what you're leveraging. You're saying we can just tag you twice and then let you go, and obviously that is fully guaranteed money. So look, it could be 2 franchise tags fully guaranteed, not much above that. But I think if you're not at that number, I would argue it's not necessarily good faith, and it sounds like maybe they offer Barkley that at the very end. So anyway, no, I mean the position is so devalued at this point. But then you mentioned the hypocrisy of the Colts, and I knew all along the Colts didn't want to trade him. But the reports about Jalen Waddle and a first-round pick and all that, it's basically them saying, we're not going to trade you, but we'll give you the opportunity to go talk to other teams to see what contract they're willing to offer. But it's all moot in the end. I'm not surprised with the result.
And I got to give the Raiders credit. At least Jacobs got above what the franchise tag was with straight salary. It was 10 and change, and he got 11 million. So at least they did up it some, which I would call good faith negotiating on the Raiders' part. All right, big negotiation that we don't get as much information on as we would like, because it does have an effect on the entire league. It's Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts got the ball rolling, got signed. Lamar got slightly more, and then Herbert got slightly more than Lamar. We knew Burrow was going to get more than Herbert. The question was, how slight is slightly, or is it significantly more? And then, of course, he gets hurt in preseason. His back is working. Looks like he's going to go at number 1. Anything you've heard about that negotiation? Contentious, close? They're okay with just tabling it till in season? How's it going in Cincinnati between Burrow and the Bengals?
Yeah, my understanding is they definitely do want to get it done. I don't know if the injury impacted it, but I don't think it did. But the sticking point is still just how the Cincinnati Bengals structure their contracts, where they do not guarantee money outside of signing bonuses. And when you're talking about a guy who's competing against players who've now gotten $200 million guaranteed, several guys now, not just the Deshaun Watsons, but Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert and all these things, if you're only going to guarantee a signing bonus, even if you give an $80 million signing bonus, which is probably what Burrow would have asked in that scenario, maybe even more, it complicates everything because then it's a cash flow conversation. Justin Herbert got phenomenal cash flows in his deal. Basically, Lamar Jackson set the record for $80 million in new money in the first new year of his deal. Herbert got $100 million in new money through the first new year of his deal. So, you're raising it by 25%, and then Burrow's supposed to top that. So I think it does get done. I think Cincinnati is going to bend a little bit on contractual precedent. We saw it with Trey Hendrickson. They gave an extension to a player with 2 years left for the first time they've ever done that in the current CBA. It goes back to like Carson Palmer in 2005, I think was the last time they did it. So I think they're going to get it done. I think we will see an extension before week 1.
Yeah, they have to get it done. By the way, you think Jefferson's getting done before week 1 as well?
No, I think there's close to a 0% chance Justin Jefferson gets done before week 1.
Wow.
Yeah, I would be shocked.
Interesting. You think that's going to be an issue moving forward?
I don't. I get that he's a special talent. I think you could argue he's the most valuable non-quarterback in the entire NFL. But you look back historically, when you're a first-round pick after your third season, yes, you're eligible for a deal. But if you're a non-quarterback, it's pretty rare you get that deal. I mean, we're talking about Nick Bosa and all those guys. He was already a special player as well, and they waited till after that fourth season. That is more standard. Is the non-QBs wait till after the fourth year as opposed to after 3.
All right, I want to give you a chance to just talk about the National Football League, not salary cap related, just prediction, and the like. How good is Aaron Rodgers going to be after he takes the Jets to the Super Bowl?
I think they're going to be good. I was at Jets camp the day after John and I hung out at Eagles camp, and look, the offensive line gives me a little bit of concern. I think it is a good thing that Mekhi Becton won that right tackle job. He's probably the most talented player in the building, but outside of that, the defense is, I think, maybe the best defense in the NFL from top to bottom. Then you have, pretty good weapons. Garrett Wilson was open all day long in that practice that I saw. Alan Lazard had the highlight of the day with a touchdown down the right sideline. Like, not only I think they're loaded at a lot of spots, but also have pretty good depth. The only weakness in my eyes is that offensive line. But if they get healthy with Dwayne Brown and Elijah Vera Tucker, specifically, I think they're an average or slightly above average O-line, and that's their worst unit on the entire roster.
And Rodgers will help that as well. Jody's a Jets guy, Brad, if you don't know. So he's brimming. I think they're going to be
green
great.
Super Bowl, Eagles.
I think
write it down 90-1. Go ahead and get to your sports betting app. Put it in now.
He's motivated. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers. He wants to stick it to the Packers. I think they're going to have a special season. Obviously, everything comes down to injuries, but boy, I think the Jets are going to be really, really good. Now that we've gotten to the down to the 53, still some movement is going to happen until next week, a little bit here and there. But I probably a difficult question, but I'm going to throw it out at you. You can handle it. Give me the 2 or 3 best roster builders in the NFL. So, that involves salary cap and personnel. Who do you think does it the best in the modern environment?
There's always a question of are we doing full body of work their entire career or the last couple seasons? I'll say this answer is the last, 3-4 years. Howie Roseman is number 1. I'm not saying that just because I'm on this show. I think I called him the executive of the year in 2021 when they made when they tanked in week 18 and traded for Devontae Smith and all that. But yeah, Eagles are a number 1 because I said recently what Duke Tobin has done in Cincinnati.
He's done a phenomenal job, Duke Tobin.
It's exceptional.
He's got a sample like 3 people, Brad. And Howie's got like 50. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the thing. Where again, I'm not taking away from Howie, but he probably has the most resources at his disposal of anyone, and Duke Tobin probably has the least. And he is, I just love the way they've done free agency and the draft the last couple of years. They're also a team where I like the starters, I like the depth a lot as well, and that does matter. So them two in the last couple of years, I think, stick out. The third could be a handful of teams. I mean, you got to give Brett Veach some credit. I probably wouldn't, is off the top of my head, but I think they have done a good job in particularly balancing. I mean, look at last offseason, an offseason where people thought they were going to take a step back and not be as good.
Yeah,
they saved themselves. Saved themselves a ton of money with Tyreek Hill, add some extra draft capital, and still win the Super Bowl. Yes, having Patrick Mahomes makes your job easier, but he deserves credit for, like the Rams, they win a Super Bowl, they make Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp, and now look at them. So he was patient and he thought long-term and short-term, which I know is hard to do for a lot of these guys.
With Veach, though, when push comes to shove, Andy's making the decisions, right? Here in Philadelphia, push comes to shove, Nick's being consulted, how he's making the decisions. On personnel, is Andy dictating Veach more so than maybe other coaches dictate the general managers around the league?
I would assume so. They're a handful, Reed, Belichick, Pete Carroll, like they have a lot of power and a lot of say. I'm sure that is the case with Andy Reid, but still to Veach's credit, you have to work with that, work around that, work through that. I know Mahomes was his guy, and everyone will tell you that was like he put his stamp on it and really, really pushed hard for that. So yeah, that is fair. But I still think, if I had more time to think about it, maybe he would be number 3, but I think he's top 5, top 7 for sure.
At PFF_Brad, make sure you follow Brad Spielberger on X. Does a tremendous job at Pro Football Focus and Over the Cap. Best contract guy in the business as far as I'm concerned, and that's because he knows football as well. Brad, week 1 is coming up, and it's going to be Eagles going up to Foxborough for Tom Brady Day. I've been waiting. Everyone says this league is cyclical and you sort of have a pendulum effect and everybody's going one way, and it's the positionalist players, the hybrid safeties, linebackers, all these undersized guys. And we talked about the devaluation of the running back before. Is anybody going to wake up and say, there's a bunch of light guys on that side, I'm just going to start going downhill, zag when everybody else is zigging when everybody else is zagging, or are we past that? It's just not possible.
No, I think to a degree, yeah. I mean, the Patriots, I think, are an example. It's kind of funny. Their offense, I think, is built to attack smaller defenses and go after those hybrid players. But then on defense, they had the fewest snaps played by linebackers in the NFL last year because they love those, Jabril Peppers, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar type guys that are kind of safety linebacker hybrids. But no, I think it is still a thing. I think you are going to see teams lean into that if they don't feel they have a great quarterback or whatever the case may be. I think right now England is probably the best example. But yeah, at a certain point, if everyone's light and everyone's trying to defend the pass and give up against the run, which some teams like the Rams and Chargers basically just want you to run the football on them.
Yeah.
You'll see a transition back. I think we will see that.
All right. Along those lines, 3 quarterbacks taken at the top of the draft this past year, 1st, 2nd, 4th. All of them have physical capabilities. Stroud shocked everybody with his big run in the championship game against Georgia. But, he can run too. Yeah, he can. As can Young. We know Richardson can. How much of maybe a flip, maybe a trend, a little swing of the pendulum is running quarterback going to play in this league going forward? We got ours here in Philly. How about everybody else?
I think at this point, even if the guy is not a player you want to use on designed runs, you need to now have a quarterback who can scramble. So again, we're talking about the pass game, right? So if you have defenses that have light boxes, that are playing too high coverage almost every snap, that are always a nickel or dime or whatever, and are dropping back to protect, like no one thinks of Patrick Mahomes as a running quarterback. He's the best scrambler in the NFL and gets so many rushing yards and so many first downs because everyone drops 8 against him. Josh Allen too, Jalen Hurts as well, but obviously also, his game is actually running the football. So I think if you have a guy that can't take advantage of hey, pick up 7 yards here, get a first down here with a scramble, you're behind the 8 ball. So not necessarily a Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson, but I think you need to have a guy who can now take advantage of, free space to pick up 7, 8 yards.
Yeah, so don't get too high on Tanner McKee if you're an Eagles fan.
Hey, he looked good. He looked good the day I was there. He's got some zip, but not the best athlete on the field that day.
No, he had a great preseason, but yeah, he's an old school 6'6", a little bit under Brad Spielberger, traditional pocket passer. Those guys are becoming dinosaurs. No question about it. Probably rightfully so.
Yeah.
But Brad does a tremendous job. Again, at PFF_Brad. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. And it was good to see you, Brad. It was good to see you at Eagles camp. And how impressed were you? But how many camps you go to?
I've been to 4 now. Eagles definitely had a nice setup. I was impressed.
Now the Jets, I told you they had a nice setup. Did they have everything set up?
You were not lying. Yeah, the Jets probably top of that list. You were not lying at all.
The only thing when you go to Jet practice is you got to get somewhere near the tree, so you get a little.
The tree is awesome. I love the Jets facility. Love it.
If you get a little shade time in the tree, you had a good day at Jet camp. Brad, great stuff. We're going to tap into you plenty during the season. Thanks for jumping in with us today. Before we get it underway, we'll get back to you and get you back on again soon enough.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Brad Spielberger at Pro Football Focus. Their cap analyst does a great job at crunching the numbers. And don't kid yourself, that's a big part of building NFL teams these days. Talent evaluation is always going to be number one, but a very close second is the ability.
By the way, Brad, and he's not playing up to the fan base here on Burst 365. Called Howie Roseman the best roster builder in the NFL. And I can't disagree with him.
That's what we'll be talking about as we get to game number 1, Patriots next Sunday, the roster building. And if this roster that Howie Roseman has put together is the best in the NFL. If it's not, it's damn close. And nobody going to argue, oh, they got a lousy roster. No, we know the Eagles have a very good roster. They still got a couple questions to answer, but they've got a very talented roster. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back. We need to put a